Alright guys, welcome back to the channel. So Spacetime Smackdown, the newest expansion to Pokemon Pocket, has been out for just a couple of days now. In fact, really just one full day, but there was already a 500 player tournament that is just wrapping up right now, and the decks that have done well in this tournament, the first big tournament of this new format, definitely will surprise you. So in this video, we're going to take a look at all of the best performing decks from this first big tournament of this new format. Again, let's take a look here. So these are the standings. The tournament is still going on. In fact, if we go to the pairings here, we see that they're actively in top 8. So the tournament hasn't fully wrapped up yet, so these standings aren't final, but 12 rounds of play have been done, so plenty of information for us to take a look at what the best performing decks were out of 500 players. We're not gonna, wait, guess what? First of all, let's take a look at the metagame a little bit. We're gonna get a very heavy mix of older decks from last format and newer decks. Again, it's day one, so a lot of people don't have the new cards. That's why a lot of people are still playing Mewtwo, Pikachu, Gyarados, things like that. But this is actually interesting. We're gonna get a very interesting, I guess, combination of new decks and old decks, new cards and old cards, and we're going to see how they all interact. But let's take a look at the standings. So the number one player here, going 11-1, was playing perhaps one of the most interesting decks that I have seen so far in Pokemon Pocket, but the more I looked at it, the more I realized that it made total sense here. So Darkrai EX, extremely good. By the way, this deck is running exclusively dark type energies because Magneton can power up itself with Volt Charge, and then once we get enough energies, basically accelerated to Magneton, we can evolve into Magnezone and then potentially attack with this Thunder Blast attack doing 110 damage. This actually is really, really cool. It's kind of an anti-meta Darkrai pick because there's a lot of great water type decks in the format right now, and hitting for weakness on those water decks can be very, very good. So the cool thing about Magnezone and Magneton is you can actually run this in any deck. Volt Charge is able to accelerate electric energies to Magneton, even if we don't have, or if we're not running electric energies in our energy zone, right? When we kind of build the deck, we don't have to select electric energies. We can still accelerate them to Magneton, basically meaning we can play Magnezone in basically any deck in the game. So it's really, really cool. The also great thing about Darkrai EX paired with Druddigon is that if Druddigon is in the active spot, it's taking hits, it's dealing damage with its Rough Skin ability. We could also deal additional chip damage while we manually attach our dark energies to our Darkrai EX on the bench, right? So it's the combination of Druddigon and Darkrai as its own little package, while also having the independently set up Magnezone doing its own thing. So kind of a split decision deck here, but very, very consistent, very decent chip damage and, you know, kind of damage potential into the mid to late game. Darkrai EX also does 80 damage for its attack. Nothing too phenomenal, but enough, honestly, if you add up all of the 60 damage it takes for us to accelerate and attach those energies to Darkrai, while also the damage we're dealing to the active Pokemon with Druddigon. So I really, really love this deck. It's unique. It's kind of anti-meta. Again, a lot of great water decks. And Magnezone is just a really, really cool card. And I think that we're going to see see a lot more play, honestly, in this format. Because for 6 cards, you can kind of put this package really into anything. And it's a really effective attacker against a lot of those water decks in the format right now. We're running 2 Giant Capes. Now, I believe Giant Cape is the best choice for a variety of different decks, particularly decks including Pokemon that have 140 HP. This is going to increase their HP up to 160. That puts us out of range of getting KO'd by a lot of different Pokemon, like Gyarados that hits for 140, Palkia hits for 150, Mewtwo hits for 150. There's just a lot of Pokemon that hit for that 150 or 140 mark. So having 160 HP is very, very important. I think it's a big reason why this deck maybe did so good, but definitely 2 Giant Capes in a deck where we're playing Magnezone and Darkrai, both 140 HP. Everything else pretty standard. One thing to note is that we're running 1 Sabrina and 1 Cyrus. So this is what we're going to see a lot of times, unless your deck that you're playing is predominantly a spread damage deck or a deck that does bench damage as a core integrated part of your deck. If it's part of your strategy, rather, then we're probably going to play 2 copies of Cyrus. Cyrus is effectively stronger than Sabrina, but it's a little bit more situational. So I think for most decks that aren't, focused around spread damage or bench damage, what we're probably going to see is a 1/1 copy of Sabrina and Cyrus in most of these decks. I think that's probably the best way to go about it. We'll have to see, but like I said, the inclusion of Pokemon Communications makes Evolution Pokemon decks a little bit more consistent and a little bit faster. So one of my favorite decks, honestly, and it was right off the bat, first place right now. We'll have to see if he ends up winning the tournament, but either way, very, very interesting. But next up, let's take a look at this Palkia deck that is in second place here, and this is going to be Greninja Druddigon with Palkia. So instead of playing Gyarados, we're playing Palkia EX. Now, I really do like this strategy. Manaphy is really, really strong. We'll probably see a lot of water decks include Manaphy. However, that Greninja Druddigon combination is just so good. It basically stalls out our games or our opponents to where we can just kind of bench a Palkia and just kind of, go ahead and play Misties, accelerate energies to it. As time goes on, eventually we will get that Dimensional Storm ready and ready to rock and roll, and it's going to one-hit KO most cards in the game, honestly. The combination of Rocky Helmet is, well, really good for Druddigon, so we're going to see that often. Pairing the Rough Skin with Rocky Helmet, that's 40 damage every time Druddigon gets attacked. Very, very strong. On top of the chip damage for Water Shuriken, we can do some serious damage without really having to commit any energies to any of these Pokemon. Allows us to commit those energies to Palkia to go ahead and use it later. The upside with Palkia here, though, is that it's also really strong off the bat as a starting option. So even if we don't lead off with Druddigon, we can lead off with Palkia still and do pretty consistent damage. We're also running 2 copies of Leaf to move that Palkia EX out of the active spot if we would rather not leave it in the active spot, because that can be a pretty dangerous position. So very similar to what we've seen before, Greninja, Druddigon, instead of Gyarados, we are running Palkia. I do think Gyarados is a little bit stronger of a card, but overall, we're not susceptible to getting bench sniped by Hitmonlees or Zebstrikas, so that's a big upside. Magikarp is really the big downside to Gyarados. Palkia does not have that problem. There's a bunch of different ways to play Palkia. I think we're probably going to see some of those in this video, but for now, that is the highest placing Palkia deck, at least at the moment. I think really illustrating how strong Greninja and Druddigon is. Next up, let's take a look at Weavile and Weavile and Darkrai. So this is really the core, or I guess the most commonly played version of Darkrai, or Dark decks, this combination of Weavile and Darkrai. I'm confusing myself overall. Now, there's 2 different ways to play this deck. You can play a little bit more of a combo-focused deck, where instead of running Spiritomb, we can play Farfetch'd. We'll run additional copies of Dawn, less copies of Cyrus, so that's another version of this deck. We might see it again in this video. We'll have to see if those decks ended up placing higher. That's a little bit more of a combo-heavy deck. We're a little bit more explosive off the jump. However, Spiritomb with Cyrus is just so strong on our first turn. We can use Swirling Disaster, tag basically every single one of our opponent's Pokemon, so that later in the game we can always Cyrus if we want to. It's a very, very strong strategy. Also a very consistent card. Spiritomb has 180 HP on top of Rocky Helmet to deal some additional chip damage. Basically, it also has synergy with Cyrus and Weavile, like I said. So Weavile does more damage if the attacking Pokemon, or the Pokemon we're attacking, already has damage attached to it, or damage done to it, rather. What am I even talking about? So Spiritomb has good synergy with Weavile as well as Cyrus. Again, both of these Pokemon have low energy attack cost. If we're playing Darkrai EX in a deck, we're going to be wanting to pair it with Pokemon that have low energy in their attack cost, maybe just hopefully 1 energy in their attack cost, like Weavile, like Spiritomb, like Wheezing. We might see a Wheezing version of Darkrai as well. That way, we can spend a lot of time attaching to Darkrai EX and doing that valuable chip damage. So, a very, very fun deck. I think this is more of a tempo, kind of mid-range, I guess, spread damage focused version of this deck with Spiritomb and Cyrus. There are other ways to play it. We might see those in a little bit. But yeah, dark type decks are really kind of emerging as the best decks in the format. A big reason why the first video I made when this set came out was that anti-meta Dialga deck. But as we'll see also, Yanmega EX is just really good against dark type decks, but it pairs really well with Exeggutor. We'll take a look at that in a little bit. Let's take a look at the next version of this Spiritomb and Darkrai deck. Again, very, very similar here. No Rocky Helmets. We're actually playing 1 X Speed and 1 Giant Cape instead of the 2 Rocky Helmets. Only 1 copy of Cyrus and 1 Sabrina, like I said, that 1-1 combo. Only 1 Dawn, so not a super combo-focused deck. Like I said, if we're going to play a combo-focused Darkrai deck, we're probably going to play 2 copies of Dawn, and we're also probably going to play Farfetch'd, I would say, so we can do 60 damage on our first turn. We'll talk about that later if we see one of those decks, but very similar to the other deck. This time, we're just kind of playing it a little bit differently. 1 copy of Giovanni, 1 XP, no Rocky Helmets, 1 copy of Cyrus, 1 Sabrina. So, again, this is very common. I think Spiritomb is very good. We'll have to see what the best way to play Weavile and Darkrai is as time goes on. But like I said, very interesting to see how people are building these decks and, which ones are performing better than all the others. Here, though, is actually a very, very interesting Darkrai deck here that is playing Wheezing. So, Wheezing, another great partner with Darkrai. Like I said, it does consistent damage. Basically, the poison on top of the Nightmare Aura ability, chip damage that Darkrai will do adds up to being quite a bit. I think it ends up being basically 70 damage every turn, which is a lot when you consider the fact that Wheezing, also buffed by Giant Cape, has 130 HP and attacks for 1 energy in its attack cost. Here is kind of a weird flex deck. We're playing Farfetch'd, but we're not playing Dawn, so we don't really have any crazy, turn 1 combinations we can do with Farfetch'd and Darkrai, but Farfetch'd is just a really strong starting card. Again, 1 energy in its attack cost, so it does kind of, go well in a lot of these aggressive fighting type decks. But Wheezing just really, really good in this format. We're not actually even playing Koga in this deck, which is I just now realized, and I find that extremely, extremely interesting. But the combination of Rocky Helmet, Giant Cape, we can bring Wheezing to 130 HP. That's pretty substantial. And yes, the elephant in the room here is that we're playing one copy of Shaman, which again, you can play in really any deck. It's 10 damage healing from all of your Pokemon every turn. That can be pretty substantial if you think about it. Paired with Heavy Cape, or Giant Cape rather, can make things very interesting. So the combination of Shaman with Potion is actually pretty decent. It really depends, again, what the meta formulates to be, but it's important that we can build a little bit more of a less aggressive, but a more kind of, tanky, kind of self-sufficient, survivability-based, version of these Darkrai decks. I don't even know what I'm saying anymore, but yeah, anyway, Potion, Giant Cape, and Shaman with Wheezing and Darkrai is very, very interesting. I'm not going to lie. Probably really good in the mirror matchup now that I think about it. Being able to heal every turn kind of negates the effect of, a lot of the spread damage decks, a lot of those Articuno Palkia decks, but also that chip damage that, other Darkrai decks are doing. So in the mirror matchup and against other Darkrai decks, this could be a really, really good pick. So we kind of have to keep that in mind. I think it's really, really creative. Like I said, it's so interesting to see what decks are doing the best in this early tournament. So very, very fun to take a look at that. Again, Darkrai really dominating the top of these, the top tables here of this tournament. Kind of makes sense. It was, again, assumed to be kind of the best deck. I thought it would be. That's, again, why I made that Antimatter Dialga deck. But here we go. Here is another Darkrai deck that is actually incorporating both Wheezing and Weavile with Darkrai. Why not run them both? Right? Just best of both worlds. We have Cyrus in here. We have Dawn for that combo strat. One Rocky Helmet, one Giant Cape. So a little bit of everything in this Darkrai deck. Again, the sample size here is still very small. It's the first tournament, only 500 players, which is substantial, but it's not as big as like the Ursa Days tournament this weekend, which is probably going to have, over 2,000 players. But overall, very, very cool to see that, again, very flexible in the way that we can build these dark type decks. I absolutely love them. I really do. I think they're so, so strong. Now, we actually saw Infernape do really well in this tournament, and this is going to be just a straight Infernape deck here. Very consistent, and much more consistent now. Again, people choosing to play Infernape over, Charizard right now. Charizard's still probably going to be pretty good in this format because these decks that run a lot of evolution Pokemon are a lot more consistent now with Pokemon communications. A very simple deck here. The one thing I like about this deck is it's 2 copies of everything, right? 2 Chimchar, Monferno, Infernape, Moltres, Giovanni, Research, Dawn, and then communications Pokeball, and 2 Giant Capes. So Giant Cape is going to be good in this deck. I do think that because it brings Moltres up to 160 HP, that can be significant. We're still getting one-hit KO'd by Palkia, but as well as Gyarados. So I don't know. I guess it's interesting. Giant Cape on Infernape gives us 190. I suppose that does give us some additional survivability, maybe against Charizard decks. I don't know. Giant Cape is just in general a really good card, but the straight Infernape deck, Infernape has great synergy with Dawn. I've said this before, but basically we can use Dawn to move energies every turn up to Infernape and then manually attach it, being able to Flare Blitz for 140 turn after turn. Unfortunately, though, the thing that's a little bit awkward with this deck is that, of course, you can't play Giovanni and Dawn in the same turn. So it can get a little bit awkward, but hitting for 150 with Giovanni, always a good option to be able to do that. And again, I think Infernape is actually better than people give it credit for. Again, a lot more consistent now with Pokemon communications, and Moltres decks are always pretty good. The other thing to note here is that we have a 50-50 chance of starting with Moltres, and every time we play a Pokeball, we have a really good chance of pulling that Chimchar. And again, the additional Moltres or the additional Chimchar we draw, we can swap for the evolution Pokemon still left in our deck with Pokemon communications. Very, very good strategy here. A very consistent deck, and a deck that's very just kind of bulletproof in what it wants to do. So I really, really like that. It's been a while since we had just a nice, consistent Fire-type deck. It's been all, kind of high-roller Charizard cards and Charizard decks for a while. But yeah, Infernape doing well. Look, 9-2. Technically 7th place of this tournament, getting top 8. Probably not what we expected in the first week, but you know what? I'm really, really happy about it. I think that Infernape is a cool card. And here we have, Manaphy box, water box. So Manaphy just really, really strong paired with Misty. Super fast-paced acceleration. This is probably what we're going to see oftentimes with water decks is that, the combination of Manaphy with Vaporeon means that we're super flexible in what Pokemon we want to set up. The combination of Oceanic Gift with Misties is so much extra energy on top of being able to manually attach every single turn. Articuno does have the potential with Misty still to Blizzard on turn 1. That's always going to be effective. Palkia as well can slash for 1 energy on your first turn. So whether we're leading off with Manaphy or Palkia EX, we still have some pretty decent options leading off. Again, we're not actually playing Cyrus in this deck, which is very interesting to me. Only 1 copy of Sabrina. I think if I had to change this deck a little bit, I would maybe cut the X speed, cut the Sabrina and run Cyrus. That way, you know, after we Blizzard or after we Dimensional Storm, we can go ahead and kind of bring up and gust any Pokemon that we want. But yeah, I mean, Water Toolbox decks, Manaphy, Vaporeon combination is deadly. There's going to be a lot of different variations on how people are playing these Water type decks, but overall, they're going to be extremely, extremely strong. Palkia, just such a good card. Manaphy, such a good card. I'm not surprised that we saw this deck pretty high up here in this particular list. I think the real downside to playing Manaphy decks right now, though, is that there's a ton of really early, you know, aggressive dark type decks that can KO that Manaphy on their first or second turn. So we kind of have to keep that in mind. But yeah, Palkia, Articuno, why not? There's going to be a lot of different ways to play Palkia, as we saw here with Greninja or Dredagon, with Manaphy and Vaporeon. Just a lot of different ways in which we can play these decks. But let's take a look at this Darkrai deck, see if anything's different here. No, pretty standard. 2 Spiritomb, 2 Cyrus, 2 Dawn. So kind of a combo. You know, I like this. I like playing 2 Dawn and 2 Cyrus in Weavile personally. Farfetch does have its upsides, but still, just attacking on your first turn, going second with Spiritomb is still really, really, really strong. And I like it. I like the synergy between Weavile, Spiritomb, and Cyrus, as well as that combo pop-off ability. I guess I'll explain the combination, but on our second turn going first, basically we can evolve into a Weavile EX in the active spot, attach the energy to our bench Darkrai, dealing 20 damage to the active Pokemon, playing Dawn, moving that energy up to Weavile and attacking for 70 damage. So it is a really effective combination if we're going first. And again, if we're going second on our first turn, we can just attack with Spiritomb or Sneasel. So very bulletproof strategy here, very consistent, but also aggressive in the early game, while also having decent late game KO potential. Again, Weavile doing 70, Darkrai doing 80. On top of the 20 damage we're doing every turn, no matter what, because we can always attach to Darkrai. So really, it's effectively 90 damage or 100 damage every turn once these Pokemon get set up. So it's just such a consistent deck, such a flexible deck, and it makes Cyrus that much better. Again, also playing Giant Cape, also playing Rocky Helmet because they're meta-defining cards. So yeah, Weavile and Darkrai is just so good. We're probably going to see a massive increase in these Grass-type decks we'll take a look at, because I do think that they're really, really effective against those Dark-type decks, but we'll have to see, again, how the meta evolves. Right now, Dark-type emerging definitely as the strongest type. This deck here, though, was very, very interesting. Much like that first Darkrai Magnezone deck, this was something I never saw coming, something I did not anticipate. Garchomp actually kind of finding its way into a very effective deck here, combined with Manaphy and Mew EX. Now, in this deck, we're playing Water and Fighting energies, but Manaphy is able to accelerate those Water energies with Oceanic Gift to both Mew EX and Garchomp. So that is really, really cool. Basically, we can kind of set these Pokemon up at the same time. Garchomp is actually pretty consistent now with Pokemon communications. We can get into it a little bit more quickly now. Also, when Garchomp is set up, we can use Reckless Shearing to draw cards and move through our deck even quicker. 150 damage with Dragon Claw with Cynthia. Very, very strong. We also playing 1 Budding Expeditioner, so we can utilize Mew as a pivot. I like it. I like it a lot. 1 copy of Sabrina, 1 copy of Dawn, just for some flexibility, you know, alternate win condition options. But overall, I really think that Manaphy is going to be a card that, you know, finds itself, you know, basically the focal point of so many different archetypes. It's probably going to be the most efficient engine in the game right now, that in Dialga. And because it's so flexible, basically any Pokemon that has water energy in its attack cost or colorless energy in their attack cost, Manaphy is going to be very, very valuable for decks like that. Again, 100 damage to 150 with Garchomp, and then also genome hacking to do, you know, pretty significant damage in particular matchups. I really, really like this deck. It's more consistent than you might think. Garchomp is better than you might think. It's nice not having to commit too many energies to this Pokemon to do 150 damage. And again, there is upside, even if we aren't attacking with it, because it has a strong ability. So very surprising Garchomp deck here. I was honestly shocked to see this deck this high up, but you know what? It kind of makes sense the more I think about it. So very, very happily surprised that Manaphy found its way into such a unique archetype like this, not just Palkia decks or Articuno decks or even Gyarados decks. So very, very cool. I really like this deck. Again, guys, comment below what your opinions are of all these decks. You know, any inspiration you're getting, any opinions you have on these decks, things that you would change. I would love to hear your guys' opinions down in the comment section below. I would really, really appreciate it. Okay, next up, let's take a look. What do we have next here? We have a Gyarados and Vaporeon deck here. So again, going to be kind of a water box deck. Actually, what's really interesting here is we have Vaporeon, but we are... Yeah, okay. No, I'm understanding this deck now that I take a look at it. So Palkia is going to be used here more as a leadoff option, basically. Articuno as well as kind of a stun option. We can move energies anywhere we want with Washout. So Palkia here, kind of a leadoff option. We probably want to start with Palkia and we just want to start slashing, we have Giant Cape to bring Palkia up to 170 HP. That is quite a lot, to be honest with you. And basically, we can just kind of put early pressure on, retreat out of the active with Leaf, and then move those energies to a late game Gyarados or even an Articuno in a scenario where that potentially could be our win condition. Giant Cape always should be played with Palkia. It protects us from getting revenge KO'd by things like Mew-EX, but other Palkias as well. Maybe even Mewtwo as well. But Giant Cape should always be paired with Palkia. That's my opinion. I'm going to be saying that stuff a lot. But again, just another version of a water type deck here. It really does showcase that we don't really need Druddigon, we don't need Greninja, and we don't need Manaphy to make a strong water type deck. The cards themselves are just so strong. Misty itself is a strong card, so I think we're going to see a lot of different water type deck variations. We'll have to see kind of what the most popular versions of these decks are, what people kind of really fall into place, and what decks they decide to play. But overall, very, very cool nonetheless. Okay, where are we? So we're going down to 12th place here, and here is our Yanmega Dialga deck. So very, very similar to the version of the deck that I built on day one. I thought that this would be a really great anti-meta pick because, again, I assumed from a tournament setting early on, people were going to be playing these dark type decks because I thought, you know, they would be so strong. But yes, Yanmega paired with Dialga is really, really significant. It's kind of an anti-meta Dialga deck. You can play Dialga so many different ways, but Yanmega really, really good. 120 damage here for only 3 energies, but it is a grass type Pokemon, and we're hitting for weakness on Darkrai and Weavile. That's 140, enough to get the KO. Also, Mew-EX is a backup attacker, but we can also just accelerate energies to a second Dialga EX if we choose to and just attack for heavy impact. 100 damage. Again, playing a bunch of tool cards here. 2 Giant Capes to make Yanmega and Dialga both over 150 HP. That's very significant. Again, for a lot of different scenarios that we've already talked about. 1 copy of Sabrina and Cyrus, like I said, going to be very common to see a 1-1 combination of those in here. And 1 Giovanni as well. Again, fairly interesting to see. 1 Potion, 1 XP, a couple research. So, 1 Pokemon Communications as well. So, you know, I don't know. I don't know really. We've made a separate video on this, so if you haven't seen that video, go check it out. I built a very similar deck. Now, I think that there's a couple ways we can play Dialga, at least in the format right now. You could play it with Licky Licky. You could play it with Melmetal. You could play it with Yanmega, as we're seeing right here, as sort of an anti-meta choice. But you could also just play like straight Dialga, maybe with like Skarmory and Mew-EX. I think that could be a valuable option as well. I believe somebody in this tournament was playing a deck like that, kind of a straight metal type Dialga deck. So Dialga is good. We can't sit here and pretend that Dialga decks aren't going to be relevant, because they are. Here in the next place actually is going to be a Dialga and Melmetal deck. So no introduction or no kind of, I guess, appearance of Skarmory. I personally thought Skarmory was one of the strongest cards in the set right now, but it's a little bit awkward because Dialga is a leadoff card in its own right. So we wouldn't really want to play sort of an aggressive Skarmory deck. Along with Dialga, like the combination of those two don't really synergize very well. We either want to lead off with Dialga or Skarmory. So again, it's a little bit awkward, but I do think Skarmory is one of the strongest cards in the game. Giant Cape and Rocky Helmet go really well with both Dialga and Melmetal. So you know what? Melmetal isn't a bad card. I think there's probably better ways to play Dialga personally, but it's a strong engine. Dialga is a strong card in its own right. So, you know, I'm not surprised that we did see Dialga and Melmetal up here. 1 Giovanni, 1 Potion, a couple Giant Capes. We're even playing a Dawn as well, you know, for sometimes just moving those energies can be the difference. It can win us games, it really can sometimes. Yeah, not much else to say about this too much. 130 HP plus Giant Cape is 150, but minus 20 every time we take an attack. That effectively gives us 170 HP, so Melmetal should be able to attack with heavy impact at least once all the time. So it's also really nice because if our Dialga doesn't go down, basically we can go into multiple Melmetals. So it's not an EX Pokemon, so it's only a single prize Pokemon. We don't have we don't have any other metal EX Pokemon, so it's really weird. Like Dialga decks are kind of in this weird in between area right now where there's a lot of, you know, different ways we can play Dialga, but we don't really know right now what the best way to play these decks are. So it is what it is. I like Melmetal. I think it's a good card, but I think it's a good deck in general. I don't know. I don't expect Melmetal to be like the most prominent way to play Dialga. I guess we'll have to see. But next up, let's take a look at this Palkia deck here. And this is going to be, yeah, just kind of a straight, you know, Manaphy Vaporeon Palkia deck. This to me is if you're playing a deck that is primarily focused around Palkia EX, I would play Manaphy and Vaporeon. That way we can just get a ton of energies on our board and attack turn after turn with Dimensional Storm. People thought it would be difficult to do this, but with Manaphy, it's really not difficult. You know, you can get 4 to 6 energies on your board on top of what you're manually attaching. And again, we can move those all to our active Palkia and attack turn after turn with Dimensional Storm here. We are playing 1 copy of Cyrus and 2 Giant Capes. Again, 170 HP in Palkia means we're not getting 1-hit KO'd. We're just not. There's nothing that's really doing that to us. So basically on turn 3, maybe turn 4, we're able to Dimensional Storm and then do it again while probably living a hit from our opponent. So this is a very interesting deck. It's going to be a lot more common, I think, as time goes on. I think Manaphy is just really, really strong. And I think the combination of Manaphy and Vaporeon makes a lot of these water decks super flexible. And the payoff, again, is pretty high because Dimensional Storm is such a strong attack. But yeah, just another Palkia deck to take a look at here. I don't want this video to be too long. I've been uploading a lot of long videos here. We're at 25 minutes, so let's speed this up just a little bit. This is going to be Celebi and Exeggutor here. Nothing else really to look at. We're playing Cyrus in the deck. Erica's, yeah, I mean, this is just this old bread and butter Celebi. I mean, nothing too crazy here. It's still a strong deck. I mean, to be fair, I kind of expected at least some Celebi decks to be higher up in the tournament just because so much dark type, you know, how prevalent the dark type decks were. But here's the other new deck that I wanted to showcase for you guys, and this is going to be Yanmega with Exeggutor. I think the synergy here is really, really good. Yanmega just really good into the format right now, but overall just a really great tempo grass type card. 120 damage is pretty significant, but now I think that basically Exeggutor EX is just a lot better. I think that's what this really comes down to. It was one of the best cards of the last format, and the combination of Pokemon communications to help find your Exeggutor EXs a little bit more consistently, on top of Rocky Helmet to deal additional damage, forcing our opponent to attack our Exeggutor 2, 3, maybe even 4 times while healing with Erica's. That's a lot of additional damage here. Also, again, hitting for weakness on those dark type decks. So I kind of expect Exeggutor to be at the very top of this format yet again, because those dark type decks that I think are also some of the best decks in the format are weak to grass. So Exeggutor stocks are going way up. We're investing in Exeggutor is what we're doing here. Yanmega, just a really great partner to pair with Exeggutor. Mew EX as well in the matchups where Mew EX is more useful than Yanmega. So I really like the deck. It's consistent, like I said. And again, Pokemon Communications makes both of these evolution Pokemon a lot easier to find in our deck, makes the deck a little bit more consistent. Okay, let's go. What else do we got here? This is another Darkrai deck with Wheezing and Spiritomb. So we're playing Cyrus and Spiritomb combo, but we're playing Wheezing and Koga. So no Weavile in here, but still kind of that, you know, Spiritomb Cyrus combo with Wheezing. Again, we've already talked about a lot of the different configurations and strategies behind these Darkrai decks, so we'll have to see. I would love to hear your guys' opinions, what you think the best way to play Darkrai is. I might make a video talking about like what the best Darkrai or dark type decks are. We'll kind of, you know, go in depth on all of these different, all of these different deck lists, and we'll kind of showcase maybe what they're best at. But either way, pretty interesting, not gonna lie. Let's take a look at this Articuno deck. Is this yeah, okay, so just another Manaphy deck here. Instead of playing Palkia, though, we're just going straight Articuno. Articuno, very good with Cyrus. So here, basically, you know, being able to pop off with Misty and Articuno while also guaranteeing to get Articuno set up basically by turn 2 or turn 3 with Manaphy and Vaporeon makes it a little bit more consistent, but also Cyrus and Articuno go very well together. I think that Cyrus has buffed Articuno, actually, basically allowing us to, you know, gust up whatever Pokemon we want after we attack with one Blizzard. Also, a Bruxish in here. Typically, this card wasn't worth running because it was a little bit awkward to attach like 2 energies to Bruxish to do 70 damage. But now that we're able to do that a lot easier with Oceanic Gift, it kind of makes sense. I like the inclusion of Bruxish. It's also not terrible if you're kind of going, you know, on your first turn if you do lead off with it. So, you know, you could cut the Bruxish and run 2 Manaphys, or you could cut something else and run a second Manaphy. I think I would probably choose to run 2 Manaphys in any deck that I am focusing around Manaphy. That way, we increase our odds of finding it here. No Pokemon Communications, but, you know, 1 Sabrina, 2 Cyrus. So, a lot of Gust here in the deck, and I do actually like it. 2 X-Speed, 1 Leaf. Yeah, I mean, Water decks, Manaphy decks, Vaporeon decks, they're just so strong. We're going to see them all over the place. Let's go down here, see if we can't find anything else here. Yeah, okay, so this is the other Dialga deck. We're going to finish off this video by talking about this way to play Dialga. So, Dialga EX, again, so many different ways in which we can build this deck, but Skarmory in its own right is literally one of the best cards in the game. We can do 50 damage as a basic Pokemon for 1 energy if we have a tool card attached to Skarmory. We just happen to have really good tool cards, right? Giant Cape brings Skarmory to 100 HP, or Rocky Helmet allows us to do additional damage, but 50 damage on our first turn is just substantial. Again, I think Skarmory is absolutely phenomenal of a card. It's actually probably the strongest, you know, first turn going second card in the game. Other than like Farfetch'd and Darkrai combo, like that does 60, but Skarmory is only a 2-card combo that does 50 damage. It's actually very consistent. But the awkward thing about Skarmory, like I said, is that, you know, it's either we want to lead off with Skarmory, but we also want to lead off with Dialga. So it's kind of interesting. Like technically we can just attack with Skarmory until we KO something, hopefully, and then go into Dialga. But I don't know. The flow of this deck is a little bit weird. I think that it's basically like we're increasing the odds of us to be able to lead off with Skarmory or Dialga. And even if we do lead off with Mew-EX, we're running 2 Budding Expeditioners and 1 X-Speed. So Mew-EX is utilized very effectively as a pivot in this deck. So again, I think that we'll have to see what the best ways to play Dialga are. I would like to see more Skarmory in the format because I do think that it's so good personally, but you know what? It is what it is. Everything's getting kind of blown up in the first couple turns by the dark type decks anyway, so that can be tough. We actually see a Mars in this deck, I should mention, so I didn't think Mars was going to be that good. I don't know if it's super important for this deck. It's just, the games don't go long enough. People aren't holding cards in their hand. It's not like the official card game, so hand disruption isn't really that good in Pocket. I wish it was better, but it just really isn't. We'll have to see. Maybe it does become a little bit more prominent in the format right now, but yeah. Anyway, guys, that's about 30 minutes, so we're gonna wrap it up here. There's probably more decks if we scroll down, but I don't want to be talking all day. And I think we covered a lot of what the new best decks are, at least in this first tournament here. Let's actually refresh. Do we see any updates to the standings here? Yeah, it actually looks like the... Okay, so in first place now is this Darkrai EX deck. So the standings have shifted it around a little bit. If we go to the pairings, are we maybe into top 4 right now? Let's just see before we end the video. So Kohli is going into finals here, and then Shark Eating Leaks and Yoguro are currently fighting here in top 4. So let's take a look at Kohli, Yoguro, and Sharks Eating Leaks. Where are we? Let's go to the standings. So Yoguro here, Kohli, and Sharks Eating Leaks. Okay, so the 3 decks left in the tournament are in fact Darkrai decks. Palkia did get eliminated here, so that kind of speaks for itself. I would love to see this Magnezone deck win. I think it's super unique, and I would love to play test it. I'm probably going to play it and try it out a lot more here in the upcoming days. But anyway, guys, I'm going to get out of here. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thanks for all the support on the channel. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you're new here. We're uploading daily Pokemon Pocket videos, and we're talking about all of the best decks in the game. I love analyzing the meta and sort of, you know, calculating how all of these different matchups and how all of these decks and cards interact with each other. I find it very, very fun. Hopefully you guys too. So yeah, like the video and subscribe. I really appreciate it. Peace out. Have a good one, and we'll see you guys next time.